everyone, and welcome to Artex Lagos 2020. We're so excited to have you here with us, and we know that it's going to be a lovely evening with you or afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. Thank you once again. This is 40 minutes with Galerie Cécile Fakhoury, as well as SMO Contemporary Art. It's going to be a panel session with these two galleries that are exhibiting at Artex Lagos 2020. Moderating this panel is Toyin Odulate. Toyin is a seasoned consumer goods and FMCG senior management professional with 18 plus years of multinational corporate experience. She's currently the founder and CEO of Olumide Beauty Enterprise Limited, an African multi-brand cosmetics manufacturing company based out of Lagos, Nigeria. Toyin is also an avid collector for many years. She's a major supporter of the African art space and community, and she's passionate about arts being integrated into our everyday lives. She believes art should be accessible to all and not just a distinct few. And we have the pleasure of having her be the moderator for at least 3 of our 40-minute sessions. Thank you so much, Toyin, and welcome.
Thank you, Melanie, for having me. Thank you very much, ArtX, to moderate these series of conversations. I'm really excited that Art Week is back in Nigeria after such a challenging year for most of us around the world. And even though we can't do this in person, we're doing the next best thing, which most of us have gotten used to over the last several months, which is virtual. So I want to welcome everyone from around the world to this first conversations. We're going to be talking to 2 galleries. The first is SMO Contemporary Art, and the second is Galerie Cécile Fakhoury, based out of Abidjan and Dakar. So I'm just going to quickly introduce the first gallery, which is SMO Contemporary Art. This is an international art platform showcasing a unique portfolio of modern and contemporary art from Africa and the diaspora to a global audience. Based in Lagos, Nigeria, SMO curates exhibitions as well as public and private art events of leading and emerging artists. SMO is dedicated to artists of all generations who have been instrumental in shaping West Africa's contemporary art canon, and those who became crucial in establishing a unique narrative about the continent. Its program also sheds light on forgotten talents who have paved the way for new directions in contemporary art, while encouraging discourse around the oeuvres of these artists. I'd like to introduce the founder of SMO Contemporary Art Gallery, which is Mrs. Sandra Obiago. Thank you for joining us, Sandra. And then I'd like to introduce also from SMO Contemporary, Nneoma Ilogu. Nneoma, thank you for joining us today. Thank you. The next gallery I'm going to introduce to you is Galerie Cécile Fakhoury, which opened its doors in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire in September 2012. In May 2018, the gallery inaugurated a second place in Dakar, Senegal, and a showroom in Paris, France. In March 2020, the project space opened in Abidjan with its programming dedicated to emerging creation and special projects. The gallery aims at promoting contemporary art in Africa. It also offers visibility to creativity and contemporary artistic diversity in Africa through its programming of solo shows and group exhibitions, participation in international art fairs such as ArtX and biennales, and through its collaboration with foreign galleries. I'd like to welcome Delphine Lopez, who is the director of the Dakar branch of Galerie Cécile Fakhoury, and she's joining us here from Dakar, Senegal. Welcome, Delphine. Thank you.
Hi, Toyin. Thank you very much.
Okay, so since we just have 40 minutes, I'm just going to dive right into it. So Mrs. Obiago, could you please tell us about where your gallery is based in the art scene? Well, we know the gallery is based in Lagos primarily, and if you could just tell us a bit about the art scene in Lagos that you've been privy to over the last several years.
Thank you so much, Toyin. Lagos is an exciting city of over 20 million people. It is nestled on the shore of West Africa, It's on the water, on the coast, and it has always been a center of art, of textile, of music, of fashion, of performance. In particular, I think what put Lagos on the map was the 1977 Festival of Black and African Culture, Festac, which took place in Lagos and was one of the biggest fiestas ever of art from the Black race across the entire globe. And people came from Cuba, they came from Brunei, they came from, you know, nations across Africa to celebrate art and creativity and culture. And I think from that 1977 incredible fiesta, which is still needing to be properly situated in the story of art in Africa and remembered for how it started this legacy of creativity in Lagos, has sprung an amazing plethora of creative talent. Many of the artists who are active in Lagos today come from very important art schools around Nigeria. So Nigeria has a long tradition of art schools, starting with the Zaria School in what is now Ahmadu Bello University in the north. We have Ife, we have Lagos University, we have so many great schools, Yaba College of Technology. And so we have many artists who are now based in Lagos who are part of the art scene. And we have a lot of new galleries coming up. We have workshop spaces like Angels and Muse. We have the new Biennale, which is now in its 3rd edition. We've got, of course, ArtX, whom we're all extremely proud of, you know, that has shone the light on art, not just from West Africa, but across the world. We have an amazing theater scene. We have jazz clubs. We have, you know, we really have fashion and music and performance and visual art that's coming together to make an incredible reflection of what it means to be, you know, to be Black, to be African, and to really use our creativity towards addressing some of the more difficult questions regarding our development. But I think our culture and our incredible vibrancy is really being now celebrated and watched in the art market. We also have a strong auction platform that started and has been going very well. So there is an increasing interest in the, you know, with investors looking at art as an incredible also tool for investment and for wealth creation. So I think across the spectrum, the Nigerian art scene is incredibly vibrant and is creating livelihoods for artists who are coming to, you know, to Nigeria and are also coming back from the diaspora. You know, a few years ago, when you wanted to be an artist, people would sort of tell you to go into the other professions. And today it's appreciated that whether you're going into film or music, you know, or fashion or fine arts, there is a livelihood. So that is the Lagos where we are based.
Yes, actually, that actually leads me into another question I wanted to quickly ask you, which is this, well, barring the kind of year we've had this year, up until before COVID, if you look at the months of October, November, and December, it's sort of like the increased tempo for activity in Lagos just sort of, you know, goes through the stratosphere. And I would always say around that time of the year that, you know, this, you know, if you want to come visit Nigeria for the first time, or you want to find a good time to come home and there are find a lot of things to do, you should come during our Art and Culture Week, right? So you have ArtX that anchors, a lot of different art events that are happening all over town. You have Ake Book Festival. Then you have the music scene, the concerts that happens in December. And I would just always wonder, what can some of the actors in these different culture spheres do to formalize this time of year in Lagos, so it's permanently on the calendar?
I think it is already becoming very well established, and every year we're getting a lot more international visitors coming to Lagos during those, the last quarter of the year. I think what we need to do as a city is to really come together and create opportunities all year round for, for major art events that will pull in tourists and will draw, Africans and Nigerians in the diaspora back home to Nigeria. So there needs to be a little bit more coordination, because by the time you get to January, as a Lagosian, you're just so exhausted, like literally exhausted, because every day from December 1, through December and especially November as well, there are events every night. And sometimes, I've gotten to the point where I just realize when I have 3 invitations, it's sometimes impossible to enjoy yourself at every venue. So one has to be very selective now when you live in Lagos and you are part of the cultural scene, which is also very exciting, but can be exhausting as well. So it's come to Lagos, because this is where the party is.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll flip over to Delphine. I wanted to ask you about, if you could just tell us a bit more about the art scene in Dakar. I know that, there's been quite a lot of exciting things happening in Dakar over the last few years. So maybe you can tell us a bit about that.
Yes, for sure. So it's very funny, because listening to Sandra Obiago, I could see, like common points with our city in Dakar, like developing art scene and very exciting moment of the year. It's true that Dakar has been like a culturally city for quite a long time. We have this historical input from after the independence, and President Leopold Sédar Senghor, who was like working a lot to support the art scene, be it like visual art, theater, dance and music. So it's a strong tradition going back to history. Obviously loads of things have changed now, but we still have like the amazing event of the Dakar Biennale, which is very well known internationally and is keeping on growing and growing for the last few editions. Unfortunately, we didn't have it this year because of the situation, but everyone here in Dakar is really exciting to jump into the next edition. And it has been a very, leading event too for artists in Western Africa and in Africa in general to have a closer look on what is going on in Dakar. And as in Lagos too, I think we have like loads of new structure opening, like art center, like raw material who are working culturally. You have like art space, workshop that are developing too. So very exciting moment. And I think it's very great to see how we can manage to structure this art scene, both with institutions such as the Biennale, but also with more, let's say, private initiatives. At the moment, for example, we have this event called Parcours, which exists for 9 years already. So it's quite a long time too. And the idea with this event was to gather all the art spaces in Dakar that are working all year round, not just for the Biennale, which is a big highlight, but we are working, we are having exhibition, we are supporting artists all year round. And with Parcours, it was the idea to, federate all these art space and give them visibility to the local audience, as well as to like potential tourists and visitors. So yeah, very dynamic art scene too, and yeah, looking forward for the next edition of the Biennale and for more and more events. Yeah.
Fantastic. I have loads more questions there, but we'll come back to it. Can you tell us, so you're presenting, I'm still with you, Delphine. So Galerie Cécile Fakhoury is presenting 5 artists this year on ArtX. So could you just tell us about your top 2, or just give us a random, because we've discussed it a little bit before, but if you could just talk us through 2 of your main artists, why you selected them, and what the audience can expect.
Yeah, so it's true that this year we have made the kind of daring choice, maybe, of having like 5 artists, which is quite a broad selection, I'd say. For us, it was the idea that maybe, you know, we can't, obviously we are very disappointed to not have the physical encounter with collectors and with our colleagues and our peers too. But so also the virtual booth is also allowing for maybe more experiment. So for us, it was really the idea to kind of try and show a larger panorama of the artists we are working with, and maybe work more as an instinctive crush for the collectors, you know, to have like a work that stands out and maybe something a little bit more, yeah, intuitive, I'd say. So the 5 artists we are showing are Abudia, who is already well known from Nigerian collectors and collectors worldwide. We are showing Romeo Mifkana, who is a younger emerging artist. Sadikou Pedro from Togo, who just had a show in Dakar just a few months ago, and Ouattara Watts, who is also a very famous artist. So these are our 5 artists, as well with photographer François-Xavier Gray. Among all these amazing talents, I think I would highlight, for the 2 you're asking, I will take 2 different ends of the spectrum. The first one, I will talk about Ouattara Watts, who is an American and Ivorian artist based now in New York. Ouattara Watts is a very fascinating artist because he's been very recognized in the United States, having an amazing career there, where he settled like 3 decades ago or so. After moving to France from Ivory Coast, he did his studies in France, where he met Jean-Michel Basquiat. And then upon a great friendship with Basquiat, he moved to the US, where he did his career there. And his work is part of an amazing collection and has been part of amazing, you know, internationally renowned exhibition, such as the Whitney Biennale, the Venice Biennale. Is part of the MoMA collection just right now. It's our great news of the moment. The MoMA has acquired one of his work. But at the same time, he needs to come back to Africa and to his collectors there, who are following him from maybe a little bit afar, which we did in 2018. Ouattara had his first solo show there. And I think he's very interesting because his work is very poetic body of work, I'd say, of course, very spiritual too. Ouattara Watts is trying to, you know, connect, to go out of like a linear way of telling history and to connect different cultural background, different cultural history, and to have them all accessible through one artwork and through a very sensitive experience of the work. In the painting we are showing in the selection, which is called Door of Cosmos, you can see that there is always this play on like texture, the colors that are, you know, cold and warm at the same time. The construction of the space is also a very dynamic one, with all these symbols like kind of gravitating around the white figure in the center. So a very, yeah, I guess a very sensorial experience, sorry. And yeah, very deep also as a, like rich cultural look on our contemporary culture, be it from Africa, be it from the US where he's made his life, from cosmogony, from African tradition. So yeah, a very intriguing body of work.
Fantastic. So I'll come back to your artists. Nneoma. Hi. So I wanted to ask about the artists that SMO that you're presenting this year at ArtX. I noticed that you're presenting 3 artists, and out of the 3, 2 are female. This almost never happens. So it's really exciting. So if you could, talk to us a little bit about that and how you selected these 3 artists. And I know Mufuli Bello is back again for the 2nd time around this year. She was very well received last year. And you could just quickly walk us through why you selected these 3 this year. And was there any intentionality regarding 2 females out of your entire presentation?
I'm going to start with your last question. SMO is always very intentional about showcasing female art. We have an art exhibition which we've done for the last 3-4 years called Standing Out, where we showcase it's been a group exhibition of females because globally you see that there is a poor representation of females in the art space, with women having exhibitions and things like that. And so we wanted to be intentional in terms of putting female art forward, art by women forward, because this is needed and why not? And so that is part of what guides our program, part of what guides what we do. And so talking about what we're presenting at ArtX this year, we're so excited to present the work of 3 artists from West Africa in a showcase that we're titling Meet My Eyes. I think that this is a showcase that is very pertinent now and has been for many years. And it's kind of speaking to the universal themes of, well, really the soul of the human experience, with themes such as the portrayal of self, how you find self, assert self, and celebrate self, as well as how portraying, in terms of portrayal and acceptance as one moves through mental, physical, and geographical spaces. Speaking specifically to each of the artists, we have Angel Etudi Esamba, an artist born in Cameroon, now based in the Netherlands, a photographer who is so intentional about how she uses her works to portray Africa and Africans, changing the depictions that have gone on in the Western media of Africa, like with images of poverty or exoticizing of women, and being very intentional really about how she portrays specifically the woman, with themes of strength, of hope, of beauty, with no cladding. You know, in looking at these photographs, you see that there's barely any adornment or any jewelry, but yet you see the beauty, you see the rawness, using light and contrast to really speak to the beauty of the black skin and of the black person and of the black woman. And then moving on to Mufuli, whose very striking blue paintings is more so coming from a different approach. Mufuli is a Beninois artist who initially studied law and is then using her expertise and skill to re-examine the social and cultural role of women. You know, in a lot of African spaces, the woman is portrayed with kind of like this timidity, or sometimes it's actually invincible. And the blatant glares and glances of her subjects kind of asserts the woman in her space, kind of bringing about themes of boldness, daring you to look at her, to listen to her story, to hear what she's really about. And so then lastly, we have Olumide Nadibe, a Lagos-based multidisciplinary artist. Olumide is someone who upcycles things that people would throw away, you know, plastic bags, jutes, water sachets, juice boxes, creating these beautiful works that speak to themes of global migration. You know, how people, the notions people have of, or what inspires people to want to migrate somewhere else, and the reality when they arrive in those places? Does it meet their expectations? How are they received? How do they move through these spaces? And how can they then rise above? And that is the overall theme of Meet My Eyes. It's that hopeful message that regardless of how we're perceived, regardless of what we go through, we're able to assert ourselves, we're able to move with dignity, we're able to reclaim our heritage, we're able to reclaim our narrative and thrive in whatever society we find ourselves.
Thank you for that. I actually wanted to ask you about that, especially talking about Olumide or Nadibe technique specifically. I know with a couple of his last exhibitions over the last couple of years, I know there's this either the response is either one of shock when they look at the detail of what he's done, the sort of materials he's used, from like plastic bags to covers and things like that, to surprise, right? Because and I think his work speaks to sort of the urban pollution and lack of recycling initiatives, or strong citywide recycling initiatives that we have, especially in a city like Lagos and most other urban cities across, even across Africa specifically. Can you talk to me a bit more about that and his thinking around that specifically, and why you feel that maybe some people feel that we can't put this in our homes, so maybe this is more institutional art because it's also installation, so it's not your average art piece on a canvas that you can just put on a wall in your home. So it requires a lot of digestion, so to speak. So can you speak to us a bit more about that?
Thank you. I think that Olumide's art is very relevant in society today because it speaks on the topic of consumerism. Like, Olumide is using juice boxes, plastic water sachets, plastic shop bags, and upcycling them into these beautiful pieces of art that is speaking to as humans, our use of materials, how we consume, how we waste of them, but also to greater issues like I spoke about earlier of migration. And I think that these issues are very important. In terms of collecting, I would say that there are different forms of his work. Like, for instance, if you look at White Stripes, it might appeal more to certain people maybe than the ones with the knots. But I really think that each piece that he creates is fit for home, and they're well durable and look beautiful in personal spaces. But I really do think that these are conversational pieces. These are pieces that I would want in my home to start very important conversations about how we move through life, how we use products, how wasteful we are as a society, but also the topics that he's speaking about in terms of migration and other things.
Fantastic, thank you. Thank you. Delphine, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about one of your artists, Romeo Mivkanin. He's from Côte d'Ivoire. And you were telling me a little bit about his technique using sheets and how he manipulates, the sheets to present his current works, which features, Black personalities, Black and African personalities from different parts of the diaspora. Could you talk to us a little bit about that? Because I don't think it's that obvious when you look at it virtually. His pieces look like you'd have to see them in person to get a real context regarding the sort of material that he used. So could you walk us through some of those technical points?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. So Romeo Mivkana, he's born in Abidjan, but he's from Benin. He's a Beninese artist living in France and in Benin at the moment. So his body of work is very fascinating because Romeo Mivkana is questioning the representation of Black body throughout history. So in the selection that we've made for Artext, we have selected one painting, who is from the show The Soul of Black Folks, that he created for the gallery a few months ago. And in this body of work, the idea for him is to dig into what is considered as a masterpiece within Western art history, and how these paintings are often related to, notion of powers, to Orientalism, to colonial power also, and how in the narrative they are telling us about ideology that were, prevailing at the time. So the idea for him is to deconstruct all these representation scheme and to introduce his own very personal approach to it. So the first step for him is to replace all the character with this kind of a self-portrait that you can see on the painting now at the screen. He's like taking all the role possible, the female, the feminine role, the man's role, the dominant one, the subvert one. So he's like re-embodying every character. And to paint this reenactment of history and this reappropriation of history in his own term, he has this very specific technique where he's collecting sheets, bed sheets from all over the world that are often gifted by people who are very close to him or who are, sharing like a strong intellectual connection with him. He's then take the sheets and bury them somewhere. You will never know where. It's kind of his process, like secretive reparation in a way, to have something hidden from the world and preserved in the matricial land of the world. And when he feels that the sheets are ready for the painting, to receive the painting, he takes them out and plunge them into elixir baths of his own making, which are tinting the canvas and giving this very, brownish, like a parchemin, I guess, I don't know if you say in English, but aspect where you can then see the character and the painting really emerge from it. And he has this process for all the work that we are showing in Artex. So I was talking about the Venus Hottentot first, and he also did 3 portraits, well, more than 3, but at the moment we are showing 3 portraits of like cultural personalities, actors of the cultural life and ambassador of like Black culture through fashion, such as with Charles Henningpool, such as biodiversity to create like maybe, and sustainability to create maybe a link with Nneoma, with Wangari Maathai, who is like a Nobel Prize for peace through a research for sustainability and biodiversity, or again through music and with the singer Rokia Traoré. So it's always the idea of giving space to cultural actors to get an inscription in the writing of contemporary culture and also on contemporary history of art, I say. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Mrs. Obiago, I wanted to pose this question to you, and anybody else that wants to jump in can jump in. I noticed that with the this inevitable question, that with the pandemic and the lockdowns and how we were all forced to, stay in our primary environments, and a lot of the social unrest happening in different parts of the world, sort of one after the other. You have the BLM movement, you have NSARS here, you have police brutality issues in different countries across Africa. I noticed that a number of artists sort of seemed to use that time to buckle down to produce some very in-depth, some of their best work, and this was sort of like the gift of time that, they probably didn't have before. If you're sort of like rushing through creating and then wanting to present. Could you talk about, do you see this as a theme or as an influence to some of the artists that you've represented, that you've exhibited this year, because I know you've exhibited a few, or in some of the artists that you're presenting or the works that you're presenting at ArtX this year?
Thank you, Toyin. 2020 has been a very challenging and difficult year, politically, health-wise, and as you've said, you know, the unrest, the Black Lives Matter movement, and so on. And we definitely did curate to reflect the moment, to reflect the times. My background is in development, and I spent the first sort of 20 years of my career as a filmmaker and photojournalist, looking at issues of, you know, human rights and democracy and good governance and girl-child empowerment and so on. And then around 2009, I went on an Aspen Institute fellowship, which was called From Success to Significance. So how do we use what we have done and, you know, become, you know, good at, and try to now start working on legacy. And it was during that time that I started looking at art and creativity as an avenue to actually reaching the good society, actually trying to improve livelihoods, to address the issues that are deep-seated within each and every one of us, on a spiritual level as well as on a physical and on a psychological level. And so SMO really focuses on three things. One is to provide access to art, because often people don't go to galleries or museums in Africa. And so we wanted to bring art into the marketplace. And we don't have an actual gallery. We present art in different ecosystems, whether it's hospitality, whether it's, you know, we've done exhibitions in public spaces, in design concept stores, even at the Lagos Court of Arbitration. And so the art that we have seen this year, beginning of the year, we did an exhibition of young photographers who were documenting Lagos and the, you know, the stresses, the hustle and bustle of what it means to live in Lagos. And it very much represented sort of a very young urban vibe. And then we also try to raise money through the sales to feed hungry Lagosians. So that was, you know, a collaboration with these young artists, and the collectors were very, very supportive, and all the money went towards, you know, providing food for the needy during the lockdown. So access is very important, and I think documentation is very important. Documenting what we have gone through this year. I know ArtX is you know, presenting the photographs that were taken during the NSARS protest movement on your platform, and that's so important. And as a gallery, we have also really focused on long-term documentation of, you know, of the moment, but also of the past, which infuses our present. And so these photographs that are being presented now need to also go much deeper to actually tell the fundamental stories that led to this protest. And I think that the work that we have picked for ArtX is very much on the level of inspiring hope, because it has been such a difficult year. And I think Angel's work, Olumide's work, and Mufuli's work speak to a strength within, a power that we need to keep going. and meet my eyes is a very important concept, especially for our youth as well, who have risen up to really be heard and to say enough is enough, and we need to change the problems that we have within our society. And Meet My Eyes is also resonating with the struggle to be heard, and to be appreciated and to be given space to make a contribution in the political discourse. So our choices of art and the art that we have seen coming out in Lagos this year has very much been reflective of the pandemic. We have an exhibition right now at the Wheat Baker of work by Ibe and Anaba. There's one that's called Light at the End of the Tunnel. Joy comes in the morning.
Right.
And one of them is just a conversation that he's had with his daughter over the whole pandemic period. Like, how do we move out from here? What are the lessons that we've learned? So it's been a time of pain, of suffering, but it's also been a time of new inspiration, a time of coming up with ingenuity. Even these Zoom meetings are amazing. I mean, how we've been able to reach across the world and continue to talk about the issues that are important to us, continue to showcase the work of important artists, and move on with technology. So I think the art scene has definitely strengthened our resolve for the good society and has also shown what needs to be fixed.
Fantastic. So I'm going to take, for the sake of time, I'm going to take a couple of questions from the gallery, from our audience. So a question here is, how can galleries ensure that their art selections for fairs are a great reflection of the diverse offerings of art from African artists on the continent and the diaspora? So Nneoma, I'll give you 30 seconds to jump on that. And then Delphine, I'll give you another 30 seconds to give me your perspective on that.
Thank you. I think that that's something that we've always focused on at SMO, ensuring that in what we do, not just at ArtX, but even in our exhibitions, that we showcase the wide variety, because it is important to tell our own stories. And I think that our artists, both locally and in the continent and in the diaspora, are doing a great job at that, of telling the varied stories of Africa and of Africans. And so it is very essential that in our programming and in what we show at these global fairs, that we are intentional about doing that. And that's what we've also done in showcasing the works of 3 artists from Nigeria, from Cameroon, and from Benin.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Delphine, do you remember the question?
I do. I completely agree with Nneoma. It's exactly, we're sharing this point. It's about having like a programming that reflects all the different narratives that are building our African history, all the different voices, all the different practices, all the different stories. And I guess, yeah, we do try also to have like this reflecting in our programming, our shows, in the edition that we are making for our artists, really trying, as Sandra was saying a little bit earlier, to keep the traces of what is happening, and to have like a strong contribution to the writing of history, and to keep traces of that through shows, through physical experience, and also now through virtual encounters and another diffusion of works. Yeah.
So there's another interesting question here. What informs your selection of artists for different fairs, and what criteria do you use in judging that diamond in the sea or diamond in the rough that emerges once in a while? Is the preference only for artists who are established? So Delphine, I'll let you do another 30-second dive into that.
Yeah.
How do you?
Sorry?
How do you select? How do you select your artists? What criteria do you use to select those artists that you?
Yeah, I think for us, it's this year and in general, it was the idea to, give an open space to discover also new artists. So as the participants say, of course, there is like very well established artists, because I think sometimes it's always like a pleasure to see a work when artists such as Ouattara Watts are quite rare on the fair market and situation. But it also the idea to introduce artists that maybe has not been shown in the cities or in the countries where we are exhibiting. So it is the case, for example, for Romeo Mifkana, which is the first presentation in Nigeria. Same for Sadiku Pejo. So it's the idea to have strong references, but also new discoveries, I guess.
Yeah. So for example, you brought, just a quick one, you brought back Abu Dia a second time. He was very well received at last year's Art X. So could you give us a quick 2-second reason as to why you put him back as part of your selection?
Because last year Abu Dia was such a success. I think he has like his work is resonating so much with, like Western African metropolis and, global city. And I think especially something with Nigeria, in a way that, it's a vibrant city and people are very inventive to make a thing out of it. So it was kind of a wing to last year, because so many people enjoyed his work that, we always want to, be, sharing the good art.
May I maybe also make another contribution, which is that the diversity of medium, when we choose which artists to bring to the fair, we look at geographic diversity, we look at gender balance, we look at age, and, as Delphine said, artists who are maybe emerging or who are maybe more rare and haven't been so much in the market, as well as those that have. But I think it's always interesting to have a diversity of medium. So for example, we have photography, we have painting, we have sort of tapestry this year, so that you get a sense of the width and breadth of creative potential and possibility. There should always be something to pull you in and to have you step closer and to say, oh my God, look at this detail. Look at this boldness, look at this color. So I think those are also very important. And then also price point. Let's be very honest. You're not going to bring only emerging artists to a fair. You do also have to look at having a diversity of price points as well. So I think.
I want to quickly jump on this. So for example, you brought Mufuli Bello back this year. I think you brought her in last year for the first time. She was very well received. So could you just maybe in about 10 seconds tell me why you brought her back this year? Similar theme to what she had last year, but do you feel that there was a demand to bring her back? Was that an internal gallery choice to do that? Could you put us through that a little bit?
Well, I think Mufuli is a young artist. She's self-taught, which is interesting as well. And her portraits are so powerful. The blue, the royal blue that she uses, is inspired by the Adire, the rich Adire history along the West African coast, the batik, the indigo. And then she speaks a lot about cultural strictures within the African tradition, and women who are strong icons of influence with that background. So it's interesting that this year we have Angèle, who is an African artist based in Europe, that's looking at how Africans are seen in stereotypes and trying to break that stereotype of poverty and exoticism. And then on the other hand, we have Mufuli, who is grown up, nurtured in Africa, and she sees the African woman from the point of view of strictures within society that tradition places on them, whether it's harmful traditional practices and so on. And you see the strong portraits of women who are meeting your gaze and are keeping their integrity and their elegance and their beauty. And there's just it just resonates. It's just something that that people really responded to, and I think that's why we brought her back. She's also a young artist, and we believe in supporting young artists as much as supporting artists like Angèle, who have had a very, very rich career and have shown at museums and and have been very widely exposed. So also having that balance.
Fantastic. So I have some collectors' questions, and we expected this. Now let Nneoma take this. So we have a question from Barbara. For emerging collectors, is it important to meet gallerists that guide and mentor as one collects art? Do they see their role in this way? This is a huge question in this part of the world. So I'll let you take that first, Nneoma.
Thank you. I think that, I would kind of reference the talk that happened right before this, the ArtX talk that happened with a few under 50 collectors. And I think one of the points that came up was kind of the visibility or lack thereof of African collectors. So we definitely, as a gallery, think that it is very important to nurture and mentor, if you want. I don't know if that's necessarily the word I would use, but guide collectors as they move through their journey in collecting. Something that, as Ms. Obiago mentioned earlier, is that we're very big on visibility and documenting, and we work with a lot of collectors and collections in order to advise on what we think would be good for their collection, as well as the next steps they can take with their collection, as well as celebrating their collections. Because in Africa, it's important to know that there is a lot of African collectors on the scene, and that they're doing a lot of great work on the continent in supporting the arts. You see a lot of collectors who are investing in spaces that increase artists' potential, that mentor artists and things like that, that give artists opportunity or even funding art events. And so it's important to celebrate these collectors and also to guide them to reach their full potential and be recognized globally as active players in this art space.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And Delphine, you can jump in here as well, because when people think of the average collector, I don't know if there's any guidance necessarily that's happening here, or hand-holding that's happening with galleries, either formally or informally, or helping collectors, younger collectors or emerging collectors, to diversify their offering, their collections necessarily. Delphine, do you see this with some of your clients? And is this something that you guys try to do at Cécile?
Yes, absolutely. As you say, you have always this idea of like well-established collectors, maybe from like a little bit older generation that are, well-versed, both in art history and in, let's say, the code of the art market, in attending art fair, visiting galleries, which is all a work that is very important to make accessible. Sandra was telling that a little bit earlier, that people can come and enter our galleries and visit our art show and feel free to chat and to ask any question they have, be it about prices, be it about how you become an artist, how you become a collector. So I definitely think it's very important to break this image of something of like older, let's say, collectors, very well known, familiar with all the codes, but that we are also really open to newer generation. And for us, I think it's also the idea to, maybe jump onto other way of doing things. So obviously we have like very traditional art show, opening, vernissage, but it's the idea of like maybe going towards the new collectors instead of them coming to us, and trying to encourage them to go towards them, maybe try to understand also what they need and what they want from a gallerist in 2020. So I think here in Dakar, you can also see, you can also see this, you know, slow, like diverse process in the art market. It's a slow process. It's the idea of trust also, obviously, because between a gallerist and the collectors, you have like a stronger relationship through time that is built. So yeah, it is changing, and we are.
Delphine, do they tend to be local between Côte d'Ivoire and Senegal, for example, or do they tend to be international in other countries or in Europe? What are you seeing a good mix, or more skewed one to the other? 5 seconds.
Yeah, at the moment we are our collector base is more international. It's like collectors that are traveling to Africa often, but who are based in different countries, be it in the United States, in Europe. But we are also really seeing a change in the balance. At maybe Cécile could say, like 10 years ago, it was exclusively international through, you know, the gallery system as we have it now. But at the moment, you can see that it's changing, and local collectors are more and more keen on, you know, being actors and being active in supporting the art scene, in supporting the African creation, in supporting the art market, and yeah, in contributing in the art scene in general. It is definitely changing.
That's good to hear. Mrs. Obiago, this is one of my last questions. What do you think of the rise in demand for African art in recent years? In particular, what role do you think galleries are playing or can play to ensure that this is sustainable as opposed to a trend?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. And the way to sustain the growth of the industry is really to strengthen accessibility. I saw in the chat, somebody spoke about democratizing art, and that's so true. You know, by bringing art into spaces where people don't necessarily expect to find art, we have started whole new conversations around art. So many collectors, so many people who have come, for example, to the Wheat Baker meetings, have stopped and looked at the art and decided, wow, I should invest in this or that piece, without having the intention of being part of, you know, a vernissage or going to an opening with the intention of buying art. So accessibility to art is extremely important, and also telling the story behind art. It was very interesting because we had an artist talk, and a lady walked in and said to me, oh, you know, Sandy, I don't like this art at all. And at the end of the artist talk, she walked up to me and she said, I'm in love with this artist, I need to buy his work. So what changed? It was the story behind the art. It was the fact that something resonated with her that maybe at a first glance, she couldn't quite appreciate. And once you get into collecting, there's nothing like it. It becomes an obsession. You want more and more. So I think accessibility is one, documentation is one, and working with different types of collections. Just to get back to your former question, I think corporate institutions are huge investors in art. And we are working with a number of corporations to try to not just document the art, but curate it. And what we find now is that the people who are also working within the institution have started collecting and are interested. And that really was an inspiration that I got from years ago, having conversation with Alistair Hicks, who was the chief curator at Deutsche Bank. And he really inspired me about trying to light the flame of the collection within the corporation so that the people, the employees, actually become collectors and promoters themselves. So art patronage is really important. We're seeing also new museums coming up, private museums, you know, in the news just the other day was the Nneoma Museum in Benin, which is such an exciting project, you know, safeguarding restitution of stolen artworks back to Africa. How is that going to be supported? If we have the structures, if we have the institutional knowledge to be able to even look after the art. There are so many areas in the art market, whether it's framing, whether it's restoration, whether it's presentation and documentation, that are still very nascent and that need to be developed. So the way that we're going to sustain this interest in African art, and literally, I'm not even that interested in, we want to showcase African art, but we also need to realize that we have a lot of market within the continent that isn't even explored to its full potential.
Yes.
So, but to sustain it, we need to strengthen the structures that are supporting the art market. And this is so, so, so important.
That's a really good point. So my last question before we finally close, and Delphine, I'm going to give you another 30 seconds on this, is that Senegal just recently opened a pretty impressive art museum, which was, I believe it was funded both privately and publicly. So there was a lot of support from the Senegalese government for this art museum. Can you just quickly talk to us about that? Because, you know, Sandra made a good point about structures, and, you know, Senegal seems to be a little bit ahead of the curve with regards to that. Can you tell us about this space?
Yes, absolutely. So the museum you are referring to is the Museum des Civilisations Noires, so literally Museum of Black Civilization. And the idea behind it is, as Sandra was evoking, the idea of having like structure that can both sustain creation, contemporary creation, and also, you know, give access to history, and in this case also be a strong point in the restitution of artwork, and to end also the idea of this common idea that has been brought out sometime, that there's no place where we can keep artwork in Africa, you know. So it's of course like a very strong political statement, I'd say. And it's belonging into this tradition I was telling you a little bit about earlier, of like having like a cultural ministry very involved in cultural projects, such as the building of a museum, such as the Dakar Biennale also, which is an institutional biennale funded by the Ministry of Culture. So indeed, we have this structure. In terms of like private funding and corporation support, it's something that is starting now, that we are starting to see more and more, you know, like patronage from corporation. Is still shy, but it's obviously like in the trend, and there is more and more like corporation getting sensitive to this topic, and also I guess having reached a point where you are proud of your culture and you are really wanting to defend it and to, you know, take part of it, I think. Yeah. And it's true that in Senegal we have like strong structure like that are making us happy. Yeah.
Fantastic. Can't wait to come visit sometime soon. Thank you so much. On that note, I think I think this is a fantastic way to wrap up this this very important conversation. Thank you very much, Delphine Lopez, representing Galerie Cécile Fakhoury from Senegal, from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you very much, Mrs. Sandra Obiago, founder and representing SMO Contemporary Art. Thank you very much, also Nneoma Ilogu, also representing Contemporary Art. This has been a very interesting conversation, and if we had more time, there's so many more touch points to touch on. Thank you very much to the audience for joining us. We've had quite a few people join us, and thank you, ArtX, for making this happen. So Melody, I'll throw this back to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for attending this evening's talk. I know it was very engaging. We can see that from the comments. So well done, Toyin, Delphine. Nneoma, Mrs. Obiago, you know, your insights were extremely engaging. It was lovely to see the artwork as well by the various artists. We look forward to more of these 40-minute conversations continuing tomorrow. And we'd like to invite you to make sure you check out artexlagos.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a lovely night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for a great conversation. Thanks,
Thank
Toyin.
you. Bye.
Everyone, have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good evening.